good evening. You're watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Now, has the budget done all that was expected? Was the slowdown in the economy addressed? Was the trust deficit with corporate India truly covered? Or was it more about messaging? What about increasing demand that has taken a hit? Will the alternate income tax system that is optional do that? Was rural distress addressed? Was startups truly given the SOPs that they needed? And the biggest question of all, is there a clear blueprint out of the slowdown that India finds itself in? But before I get to the debate, where we will hopefully get some answers to these many questions, let me play out for you what Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said today about the preparation that went into Budget 2020. She was speaking at a function organized by industry body FICCI.
When people have asked me, you must have spent 3-4 weeks in this budget and must have been a long haul. Not 3-4 weeks, this was a longer haul. Since after July budget, for the purposes of wanting to respond to the stakeholder consultations that we've held, because the demands of the economy warranted that we do it. And of course, on some matters, we did come with some interventions, sufficient, inadequate, whatever it may be, we did come up with the interventions. So I'm not sure if I gave the longest speech, but I probably spent the longest time preparing for a budget.
Okay, so a lot of time went in preparing for the budget, but did it really deliver? Was it as anemic as economic activity right now seems to be, and what needs to be done next? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Dr. Arvind Virmani, Chairman, Foundation for Economic Growth and Welfare, Suman Sinha, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Renew Power Ventures, and Gautam Chikkarmane, Vice President of ORF. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us today. Mr. Virmani, I'm going to begin with you because I actually kicked off my entire pre-budget coverage, and the first show I remember was with you, where I asked you what you would like to be seen done. You talked about the direct tax code and said we need simplification of taxes. We have new taxes, new tax slabs, many new tax slabs. Is it the opposite of simplification?
Right. A very good question. The finance minister had a choice. Well, let me start. I think the GDP growth decline has bottomed out. So the thing before the finance minister was whether to have a kind of normal stream of reforms and actions which will lead to a slow, steady sort of recovery, or to take some more dramatic action which would, in my view, lead to a faster recovery to a growth rate potential, which I think it has, of 7 to 7.5%. It's very clear that the finance minister has taken the former course. So in that sense, what I told you that I expected with a certain probability that she would choose the second course, I've clearly been proved wrong. And as a result of that, the probability of that kind of dramatic reform during the 2020, that is the current calendar year, in my view, has gone down from what I said earlier as 2/3 to about 50%, half.
Okay. Why are we taking the slow burn route or the slow and steady route? Is that really what is needed, or is it simply because the hole is so deep, as in the gap between revenue and expenditure is so big that right now even this fiscal deficit slippage is just about going to let us coast along? I want to come to Gautam Chikkarmane. Again, we've had conversations before the budget, and I remember you, Gautam, very clearly saying that the mountain of licenses and permissions that companies need to really take to get any work done is a nightmare. It needs to be reduced. A lot has been said about trusting and respecting wealth creators. Do you think the kind of clarity that was expected on making it just literally actually easy to do business in India was lacking?
Firstly, when we were discussing that, I think it was more in the general sense rather than the budget. The budget has lost its strength to be able to be the policy driver, because all it can do is around taxes, and that too only around direct taxes, because indirect taxes other than customs are now with GST. So I expected very little because Nirmala Sitharaman had very little room for maneuver. What I didn't expect and is what she has done, what we had suggested, and that what she did for corporate direct taxes in September 2019 by reducing them to 15 and 22% should be, if they give up on all other benefits, deductions, etc., should be done for the direct individual taxes. What we didn't expect was that, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. What she has done with direct individual taxes is those 11 good intentions, which is she has converted 4 tax slabs into 11 effective tax slabs. If this is what is simplification, if this is what is known as ease of life to citizens, then I don't know what a hard life would be. So I think this is in continuation with the entire bureaucratic processes, making life difficult. Now all people will have to go to more chartered accountants to get more clarity on whether they should take the old method or the new method. I think this is a mess. This is clearly a road to hell. And I hope that over the discussions that happen in Parliament through around budget, this gets withdrawn and made simpler. What I do like, however, are 2 things. First, increase in deposit insurance guarantee to 5 lakh from 1 lakh. This was long overdue.
Yeah.
And though I feel the number which we had calculated should have been around 20 lakh, but 5 lakh is okay, like at least it's a good start from 1 lakh. Now, along with this, she should immediately retable the financial resolution deposit insurance law. Last time it went out because there was a bail-in clause and all kinds of lobbying went against it. She should now take the next step. Now that the depositors have been protected to the extent of 5 lakh, she should now work around the bail-in clause and bring it back. The last thing I like in this budget is LIC disinvestment. Again, both these are non-budgetary things, but they are nice announcements. If LIC gets listed, it would be good for capital markets. It will deepen the capital markets. It's good for disclosures. It's good for policyholders. Other than that, I don't see any step taken towards wealth creation except 2 sentences that she said in the budget, which are not in the final budget, which said, we will respect wealth creators. We will respect wealth creators. I don't see any such respect coming out here.
Okay, let me ask a major wealth creator on our panel, Suman Sinha, what you think about the budget. We heard the conversation at FICCI. We know the finance minister will be speaking to other industry bodies over the next few days, speaks to CII tomorrow as well, and that's the usual sort of thing that happens after the budgets. But frankly, in all honesty, do you think enough has been done to actually boost investments? Some say that the corporate sector has got the most. You've got corporate tax cuts, you didn't want DDT, that's gone. The people who receive the dividends now have to pay at higher rates. So, corporate India should be gunning for more investments right now. Yes, Mr. Sinha.
No, I think that I tend to agree with what Dr. Virmani said earlier, that there were 2 fundamental choices in front of the finance minister. One was to stay on the path of fiscal prudence, and of course, given the slowing economy, the fiscal deficit was widening in any case. But let it be as tight as possible. And the second option was obviously based on a lot of popular demand, was to maybe let the fiscal deficit widen. Instead of 3.5%, let it be 4.5% next year, and use that extra $30 billion or 2 lakh crores to basically find some way of stimulating the economy. And quite surprisingly, actually, I think the finance minister has chosen to go down the more longer haul path, as you also said. And I find it a little bit surprising because, what is the downside at this point with the economy not doing so well to actually give some sort of stimulus? So I was a little bit surprised about that, but nevertheless, the finance minister is well within her rights to take the decision that she did. I think there were a number of things. So that is point number one. The second point I'd like to make is that you can't view the budget in isolation. I think the government is not looking at the budget just as a one-off economic reform measure or a one-off sort of a policy document to improve the state of the economy. I think they are looking at it as a series of steps in which the budget is just one aspect of it, and perhaps dealing more with the tax part than anything else. Because despite the fact that the budget speech was in fact so long, the reality is that even so, the actual coverage into different sectors was actually fairly superficial, because the reality is in 2.5 hours, there's only so much that you can say about different sectors. And so I think you have to look at what the government has been doing and what it intends to do on an ongoing basis going forward as well. And so I think when you look at it from that standpoint, you have to look at the government's overall intentions, what they're thinking about doing in different areas. And when you look at it from that standpoint, you realize that the government actually is doing a few things, sector by sector, which are positive. I think that having said that, because this was a budget during a slowdown where the expectations are very high, I think against those expectations, perhaps people have been left a little bit unhappy that perhaps more could have been done or more could have been announced or something more path-breaking could have been done. And because that was not there in this budget, therefore people are feeling a little bit disappointed with it. However, having said that, had the corporate tax cut, for example, been in this budget, then people would have had a very different outlook on the budget and everybody would have said, what a fantastic budget this was. So it really depends upon how the government is actually messaging and coming out of their different policy decisions. I think that is making a bigger impact.
No, so the point I take is, and a budget is now 2 days old. Of course, we'll keep parsing out details from it, but we have to move on. And there's nothing that stops the government from, unveiling more policy in the days to come, which I'm sure they will. But to look at it in a different way, the big question is, why wasn't there more of pump priming that could have been done at this point? And that question was actually put to the finance minister today. So before we move on, I want to play out for you what her answer was. Let's listen in.
About the fiscal deficit number, on which many people have been speculating that it'll cross 4, it'll touch 5. Yes, today we may have a situation where you'll want the government to spend, to show that you're a socialistic expression, pump priming the economy. So if that kind of a word has to be used today, and if I have to spend a lot of money, yes, we are willing to do that, but we are clearly saying that we shall not repeat the mistakes of the splurging that happened, whereas the money that is spent now is being spent with a clear picture of asset creation, public asset creation, such assets being that which can give greater connectivity to the place from where the produce has to come to the market.
Dr. Virmani, convincing response there. Let's not splurge right now. Was the big message. And so then when does the splurge happen?
So let me give you my perspective on the fiscal deficit. Being on the advisory group of the Finance Commission, and also there being an FRBM, I personally did not expect them to exceed that 0.5% limit of GDP, which from the glide path, which the FRBM itself provides flexibility. So in that sense, it's clear they had to balance the effect on the capital markets versus giving a stimulus. That's the only thing where I slightly differ with Mr. Sinha, where I think the rest of the points we are in complete agreement. But the way I thought they could stimulate the economy was in two areas. One is by shifting consumption expenditures to areas where the GDP multiplier is higher. Now, it sounds very theoretical, but there are some evidence of this. I think there is an RBI study which shows that the multiplier of expenditures is much higher in certain infrastructure sectors than in what many people were recommending, that is a direct, into Manrega or something else, which may give you a 3-month or a 6-month high, but it doesn't give you a sustained increase in GDP. So where one can express some disappointment is, well, they have done a little bit of that. So the second one where I thought it would really provide a stimulus over a year's time, again, where I differ with some people is they expect that you inject a huge amount of money permanently, 3 to 6 months, and you will get a sustained increase in GDP. No, what normally happens then is you get a little boost and it spikes down. So the way I wanted it done, which was your initial question, which I didn't go into detail to give a chance to others to speak, was that I thought a drastic reform of the DTC could provide that long-term stimulus. So that is where is the main area where, in my view, she has chosen a cautious, step-by-step approach, which which will then mean that the recovery is much slower than it could have been. Having said that, just very briefly, let me mention where I also agree a little, disagree with Gautam, is there are a bunch of reforms. Let me mention two of them. One is the port trust corporatization. This is something we recommended 5 years ago. We've been waiting for it. A start is going to be made in that. Second, the electricity distribution. People don't seem to have noticed that she has used this thing about smart metering to try and introduce distribution competition. That's huge if it happens. The Electricity Act 2003, I've been involved in trying to implement that. It has not been properly implemented. So if a start can be made in getting competition into distribution, that would be a good thing.
No doubt, the smart meters is an excellent idea. They've said they're going to try and implement it in 3 years, at least that's what the budget speech said, and which would be fabulous even for consumers. Gautam, let's look forward. You say that the budget by itself doesn't do much. Most agree that it's not the only time and space to do things. One thing that I have been hearing again and again is, are we shying away from admitting what the true picture of the economy is right now? Because to solve a problem, first you have to admit one exists. Do you sense that? Of course, no government wants to say we're in the middle of a slowdown. It can be debated whether they should or they shouldn't. But do you think there's enough of an acknowledgement of what the true economic picture is? Both the economic survey and the budget, or the budget document, has not given anyone a clear picture. Everyone's conjecturing.
See, whether you like it or not, the slowdown is here. It is visible. It is showing itself in various ways. Now, you may say that the slowdown has ended. We have reached the bottom, as Mr. Virmani said, and I would be delighted to know I would be the first person to be delighted if it comes true, but I'm not so sure anymore. In fact, the danger is that we may slip into a recession slowly as we come down. So I don't know. At this moment, I don't see much many signals that we are doing very well, or there could be a turnaround and so on. Nobody expected anything from this budget. And if you did, I think, I don't know what you were thinking, because there was very little room for maneuver. But if she can talk about several other things and make various other signals, at this moment, at a time when there is slowdown, at a time when private capital is not investing, it is not investing money in India to create businesses, enterprises, output, jobs, wealth, that is the time that you need to talk to them directly. Simply saying that we respect wealth creators but not giving any other signals other than that in the fantastic economic survey that came a day before doesn't make sense. So now the best that we can hope for, and I presume that would be the way forward, over the next quarter there will be several other announcements that will bring wealth creators, entrepreneurs, startup together, innovators to come and do business in India. Let me tell you one last thing. I think at a time when there is a global slowdown happening, the global economy is slowing down, and India is slowing down faster than at a global rate. What you need to tell people with money is to come and invest. What is the signal that is being given? That if you invest, we will tax the life out of you. I don't think this is the right time to do that, even strategically. But in this budget, I could find nothing that they would encourage any millionaire, any billionaire, anybody with hundreds of crores of rupees to come and invest. I don't see that happening at all. And I can just only hope that over the next quarter something happens. This is the most crucial thing. Economic growth is everything
Yeah.
You cannot keep redistributing poverty. In order to redistribute, you need to create wealth. So from wealth redistribution, the focus of the government should now move to wealth creation. And I believe it's time for the entire government, not just the finance ministry, because wealth creation involves an amalgamation of several ministries to work in consonance together to deliver it. So I just hope they all do that over the next quarter. Otherwise, we are going to fall down.
No, that's a I think a very crucial point, Gautam, which cannot be reiterated enough. Wealth creation and economic prosperity is everything, and every ministry, whether it's looking at the social fabric of the country or what's going on right now, has to come in. It all plays a part, which is why we focus on all aspects of it. Sumant Sinha, I'm going to give you the last word. What do you hope to see in the next one quarter where we have a faster recovery, not wait to see if we've actually bottomed out or we're going to slip further? We can't really leave this to chance, can we?
No, obviously we can't. I think it's too important an issue to be left to chance. I think clearly, I think the government is going to carry on with its efforts in different sectors. For example, just in the power sector, Dr. Virmani talked about the Electricity Act that might get passed fairly soon. The fact that DISCOM's operating issues are likely to be addressed in that, and the fact that this whole separation of carriage and content, and therefore multiple DISCOMs, operating in the same area. All of that is being talked about. If those things get done, that will be a massive boost. They've also, as you know, obviously reduced taxes in the corporate sector. They've now put power companies also as manufacturing companies, which allows us to get a lower tax rate going forward. So there are quite a few things, at least in our sector, that they've looked to do. I think there's also big encouragement to foreign investments, unlike what Gautam said. I think sovereign wealth funds have been given exemptions on taxes. FPI limits have been raised on investments on the debt side. There are, the dividend distribution tax going away is a fairly big, thing for investors as well. So like that, there are quite a few things that they've done to encourage investments. Fine, there may not have been some massive bang-like announcement about reducing, individual income tax rates like there was for corporate tax rates earlier. But I think slowly and steadily, incrementally, the government is moving forward in a number of different areas. And I think we just have to be patient. I think the one thing that I would really like to see happening now is for the RBI to say, okay, the fiscal is under control and let's now react with monetary policy. Although, of course, I know inflation is higher than the RBI wants it to be. Yep. But I think at the same time, repo rates of 5.15% are really just way too high. And so I think that's one big area that can also provide a stimulus to the economy. So I don't see any reason why we shouldn't expect the RBI to reduce rates by a significant amount going forward, along with everything else that the government is doing. And I think slowly and steadily we'll create the base for a fairly firm footing in terms of growth rates picking up. To your question, will it happen in the next quarter? Will it happen the next year?
Yes.
Perhaps not. Even the economic survey talks about a 6.5% growth rate for next year. So I think we're looking at a sustained, slow but sustained growth rate, so that when the recovery does take place, hopefully it's a more sustained recovery where we've got a more prudent and sound fiscal situation rather than the government borrowings going all over the place, and that also then increasing interest rates and crowding out the private sector.
At least the government
so
borrowings
I think we have to wait for some of these things to play out.
Yes.
Of course, we all are impatient. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just.
Sorry?
Yeah. If you just want to finish that point, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No. What I was saying is, therefore, I think we just have to be patient. Of course, given where the economy is right now, we'd all like it to react much faster, and the government particularly, to be doing something. But I think, look, let's give it a shot, and let's hope that things come back quickly.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a choice except for keeping our fingers crossed and being optimistic and hoping that slow and steady wins the race. Let's hope it does. We're, of course, always watching this space right here on the show. So I want to thank all three of you for joining us on the first debate this evening.